While I was working 90 hours a week, coding through the night, my mother called, her voice full of excitement. "Your lake house has been sold. It's going to help your brother Isaac start his business again." I was stunned. "What did you just say?" I asked. She went on. "We're family, aren't we? Your father already signed for you." My hand was still trembling after I hung up. The feeling of betrayal, burning and deep, down to the roots, rushed through my body. But this time, instead of staying silent like I had so many times before, I made a call. The next morning, my parents called me relentlessly. I didn't pick up. But before we go any further, where are you watching this from? Leave a comment below, and don't forget to like and subscribe, because I'm going to tell you the whole truth. My name is Camilla, 30 years old, living in Boston and a freelance programmer. 2 years ago, I bought a small lakeside house in Vermont, where each morning began with birdsong and a lake as still as if it had never known turmoil. It was a reward I gave myself, after nearly a decade of relentless work, coding through the night, refusing every vacation just to save every dollar. That house was where I worked remotely, where I felt safest, because it belonged to no one but me. My family includes my father Jackson, an insurance salesman who wears a suit even for dinner at home, my mother Delilah, a liquor saleswoman on North End Street, and my brother Isaac, 27, who has always been called the pride of the family, for once having a great physique and winning a few high school basketball trophies. As for me, I've always been the responsible daughter. I still remember the day I got a full-ride scholarship to college. My parents only took me to a modest Italian restaurant, but when Isaac won the regional MVP, they threw a big party, invited all the neighbors, and even hired a live band. I used to think I could accept that I was the one who stepped back to keep the peace. But then the demands from my family started piling up, fixing the house, paying off medical debt, chipping in for new furniture, all starting with the phrase, "You can help, right?" They never once asked if I was okay. Every time I made a transfer, I used a nameless secondary account, just to avoid hearing my mother say I was being calculating. But inside, I was growing tired. Once, while having dinner with Aunt Vivian, my mother's sister, she sighed and said, 30 years ago, your mom forged your grandma's signature to sell the family's beach house. Grandma was sick at the time, too weak to sign. Your mom said, 'It's for the family.' But it was really to gamble and pay off debt." I was speechless. At the time, I didn't understand why she told me that. But now I do. It was the first warning. And sadly, I didn't listen. One weekday evening, as I was tweaking some code for a client in Ireland, my phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice was full of excitement without a trace of hesitation. "Sweetie, your father and I have made the decision for you. The lakeside house has been sold. That money will be a wonderful gift for Isaac to start his business journey." I froze. "What did you just say?" I asked, my throat tightening. "You hardly ever go there. So, why keep it?" My mother giggled like she just closed a clever deal. "We're family, Camilla. You can contribute a little to your brother's future, can't you? Your dad already signed for you." I don't remember how I hung up. I only remember looking down at my hands and seeing them tremble, not from anger, but from something far deeper. A feeling of betrayal down to the bone. I sat still for a long time after that. Memories of the lakeside house came flooding back, like a film playing in reverse. 2 years ago, I bought it with my own savings from freelance programming, not a single loan, not a dime from my family. I saw it as a reward after a decade of discipline, working through holidays, saving every bit, rejecting vacations for one thing: freedom. From the moment I signed, I placed the house into an irrevocable trust, with a lawyer overseeing it, just to protect it from all risks, especially from the loved ones I no longer fully trusted. No one in the family knew this. They thought I was just a remote worker, a bit meticulous, perhaps controlling. But they didn't know I had learned to protect my assets. from the small ways I'd been taken advantage of before. Lately, I hadn't visited the house much due to work, mostly working from cafes in Boston or co-working offices, but whenever I felt overwhelmed, all I needed was to look at my laptop wallpaper, a photo of the balcony overlooking the mist-covered lake, and I knew I was still living the life I chose. A few weeks ago, Isaac started calling nonstop. He told me about his plan to open a cafe combined with a travel agency, Italian style in the heart of Vermont. He said it was his lifelong dream, though I knew Isaac had never stuck with any project for more than 6 months. When I asked about a business or financial plan, he just laughed. "I've got vision, Camilla. Everything will come together if you believe in me." Then came my parents, calling me with gentle voices that gradually turned pressing. "Isaac needs a launchpad. Family is about helping each other, and you don't really go to that house anymore, do you?" At the time, I was just a bit confused, but I never thought they would actually do it, that they would forge my signature, and worse, that they thought they were doing the right thing. Back to the present. The very next morning, I went to the office of Natalie, the lawyer who helped me set up the trust 2 years ago. She's the no-nonsense type, always in a gray blazer and straight to the point. I placed the folder on her desk and said, "My parents said they sold the lakeside house, but legally, they couldn't have, right?" Natalie frowned, flipped through a few pages, then nodded. "Exactly. The house belongs to an irrevocable trust. No one, not even you, can sell it without a board decision or violating safety clauses." I exhaled a little, but Natalie continued. "However, if they forged your signature, used fake documents, then this isn't a civil matter anymore, Camilla. This is felony fraud." The words dropped like stones. I recalled the hazy memories from the night before. My mother laughing, calling it a gift, my father texting me for the family, and Isaac posting an Instagram story saying, "Begin the dream." I opened my emails and found an attached real estate sales contract with a signature, my name. But the handwriting wasn't mine. No commas, no pressure. And I had never signed my name that way. I took a photo and sent it to Natalie. She wasn't surprised. I've handled a few similar cases, but family matters, especially involving property, are always complicated. Do you want to pursue criminal charges? I didn't answer right away. It took me a few seconds to say something that even sounded strange to me. I want to know what else I don't know. If they dared to do this, maybe it wasn't the first time." Natalie looked at me closely. "You mean investigate?" I nodded. "I want to hire a private investigator, someone who can dig deeper. I no longer trust anyone in my family." As I left her office, the rain began to fall gently. Raindrops clung to the windshield like wounds yet to heal. I used to believe I didn't need protection from my own family, but as it turns out, the deepest wounds come from the place that should have been the safest. And now, I'm ready to go all the way. 2 days later, I met Michael Blake, the private investigator Natalie had recommended. His office was on the 3rd floor of an old building in the South End, with red brick walls and hallways that smelled of damp wood and coffee. Michael was in his 40s, tall, quiet, but with sharp eyes like someone used to reading lies. I handed him everything: my parents' names, Isaac, the house sale contract, photos of the forged signature, and recent messages. Michael listened in silence, nodding occasionally. When I mentioned the trust, his eyes lit up. "They're not just reckless, they're counting on you doing nothing." I asked, "Do you think they have other motives besides helping Isaac?" Michael paused a few seconds, then answered, his voice deep and steady. "It could be a number of things: gambling debt, crypto losses, or simply living beyond their means. But what's clear is, they desperately need money, and they see you as the only reliable financial source." He looked me in the eye. "I'll need up to a week to dig in. There'll be some travel, data retrieval, and monitoring bank activity. But I'll be discreet to avoid suspicion. I nodded. Do it. I want to know everything. Michael took a few more notes, then shook my hand. Firm, but not cold. 2 days later, he called. My mother had once appeared on a top debtors list at a casino in New Jersey 5 years ago. Some debts ran as high as $75,000. I was stunned. My mother gambled? I had never imagined it. Michael said gently, I believe she hid it very well. Those times they asked you for money to pay medical bills may have gone straight to the poker table. Then he handed me another document, screenshots from the social media account of a woman named Carla Simmons, along with a few recovered messages from an old account of my father's. In those messages, he called Carla the brave woman who made me feel like a father again. Beside it was a photo of a boy around 5, blonde, wearing a baseball jersey. I felt something twist in my chest. He has another child? Michael nodded, then added gravely, and he once asked you for money to help a colleague injured in an accident, which was actually for supporting Carla and the child. I leaned back in my chair, everything spinning. The family I tried so hard to keep peace with, the people I tolerated thinking, they just don't understand me. They understood me all too well. They just didn't care. On the way home, I received a message from Isaac. I met with an investor. Things are looking up. Below was a photo of him standing in front of a cafe, under renovation, holding a design blueprint. I stared long at the words behind him. It all begins with trust. I turned off the screen. At that moment, I wasn't angry, just cold. A creeping chill settled in my chest. I knew. This was no longer about a house. This was a manipulation disguised as family. And I will not stay silent anymore. Natalie and I began gathering evidence. She went to the bank to request copies of all transactions related to the trust, especially any irregular activities within the past 3 months. Meanwhile, I combed through every email inbox, message thread, and call history, searching for anything that could prove my parents knowingly had no legal rights to the house, but still chose to forge documents. I found a voice recording of a call with my mother, where she casually said she had signed on my behalf just for convenience, and an email from my father titled Isaac's Startup Plan, with an attached budget based on cash from the lake house. Not a single word asked for my permission. Natalie said, "This is gold, Camilla." They didn't just forge, they left a trail. At the same time, Michael sent in a series of detailed reports. My mother's credit card statement with dozens of transactions at Foxwoods Casino, screenshots of transfers from my father's secondary account to one under the name Carla Simmons, with notes like new semester tuition for Jay, likely referring to the child he had with his mistress. I nearly had to grip the armrest to stop myself from crying, but what choked me the most wasn't my parents' actions. It was Isaac's silence. While I struggled to keep from collapsing, that same little brother who once sat eating cookies with me on rainy afternoons was now posting design mock-ups of his cafe online with a caption, "Grateful for family, those who believe in and support me unconditionally." I couldn't believe my eyes. I scrolled to the comments. My father wrote, "You make us proud." My mother sent heart emojis. Not one mention of me. No words of thanks for the person being scammed. At that moment, I no longer felt like a character in the story, but a shadow erased from the frame. But this time, I would step out of the dark. No more silent support. No more silence at all. I would make each of them face the truth. It all began with a small oversight. During a rare weekend dinner at my parents' house, one of the few times I accepted their invitation to keep up appearances, I accidentally left my phone on the table when I went to the bathroom. When I came back, the air in the room had shifted. My mother looked downcast, and my father stared at me, his eyes no longer warm. On the phone screen was a message from Natalie, my lawyer, clearly visible. Do you want to proceed with suing your parents now? I knew they had seen it. No one said a word for the rest of the meal, but from that day on, they stopped pretending and began attacking. Texts and calls from my parents and Isaac started coming in. At first, they were gentle. It's just a misunderstanding. We're family, right? Then they turned accusatory. You're so selfish. Why would you drag your own family to court? It's just an old house and you're willing to ruin everything for it? I even discovered my mother had called one of my close friends, telling her I was depressed and prone to imagining negative things. On social media, Isaac posted a short video showing him and our parents cleaning the new cafe site, captioned, "Family is where dreams begin. Some people only know how to destroy." I stared at that video, seething, not just from the lies, but because they were redefining me in public. I couldn't let that stand. I called Aunt Vivian, the only person in the family who had ever treated me like someone with worth. She listened quietly as I spoke, then let out a deep sigh. "Camilla, do you remember your grandmother? When she was sick and no longer lucid, your mother forged her signature to sell the beach house. Grandma never said anything, but the look in her eyes when she found out, I've never forgotten it. And now your mother's doing the exact same thing. You're doing the right thing. If you don't stop them, they'll destroy everything good you've built." Her words were like a warm breath cutting through the chill that had surrounded me for weeks. I hung up, opened my laptop, and sent Natalie a confirmation email. I agreed to move forward with the lawsuit. At the same time, we planned a mock reconciliation meeting, a legal trap to record any admissions from the family if they slipped up. Natalie told me to remain completely calm. "You don't need to yell or prove anything, just let them speak." I agreed, not because I wanted to catch them, but because I needed the truth to be spoken from their own mouths. No more moral preaching. No more evasive blame. I wanted the raw truth exposed. The meeting took place on a Saturday afternoon at my parents' house. I came alone, brought no documents, no lawyer, only the recording device hidden in the pendant around my neck, just as Natalie had planned. The house looked the same, with the faint smell of old paint and cream curtains tinged yellow from age. But the air was different, suffocating, like everyone knew how the play ended. My mother spoke first, trying to keep her tone soft. "Camilla, I know you're angry, but that house, we did it for the family. You hardly ever go there." My father chimed in. "Without that house, Isaac wouldn't have this startup chance. You should be happy for your brother." I looked them straight in the eye, voice steady. "And who signed in my name? Who sent the house sale confirmation email from an IP linked to your laptop, Mom?" Her face paled, but she forced a weak smile. "That was just a mix-up. Your dad thought you agreed." I pulled out my phone, set it on the table. "Didn't play anything, just let them see it. My lawyer says this is a criminal offense, and you all know it." Isaac leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, voice stripped of pretense. "You've never understood what family means. That house could change my life, and you cling to it like it's some grand achievement." I looked at him long and hard. "You knew the house was in a trust. You knew Mom and Dad had no right to sell it, and you let them do it anyway." Isaac shot up, yelling, "Because I need the money. This is my big chance. And what about you? Alone in that empty house with your stupid code. You don't know how to do anything except hoard everything for yourself." I said nothing. There was no need. In that moment, the three of them became strangers, no longer my parents and brother, but three adults who had chosen deception. As I stood to leave, my mother called after me, voice raised. "You won't get anywhere. No court will tear a family apart over a house." I turned back, and for the first time that afternoon, I smiled. "Number. The court didn't tear this family apart. You already did that." And I walked out of that house, leaving behind the old life. The life I had always bent myself to preserve, even when it meant suffocating. And this time, I would see it through. Not for revenge, but for closure. 3 days after the confrontation, Natalie filed a lawsuit with the Boston District Court, requesting a temporary injunction on any transactions related to the lakeside house. At the same time, we submitted a report to the district attorney's office, along with all the evidence: the forged sales contract, bank transaction logs, the recording from the reconciliation meeting, and Michael's investigative report. The evidence was irrefutable, and it painted a full picture: not just property theft, but a deliberate series of illegal actions committed by the people closest to me. A week later, the court granted the injunction as requested. The house was frozen from all transactions, including title transfers in the land registry. My family made no public statements, but they didn't stay quiet, either. Isaac posted a long Facebook post, calling me a traitor to blood, a cold daughter who threw away her family for money, and even wrote, "If you ever need blood, don't count on mine." The post drew hundreds of comments. A few defended me, but most, relatives, my mother's friends, my father's old co-workers, only knew one side of the story, and they clung to a version of family painted in tears and half-truths. I had prepared myself. Natalie said, "The quieter you stay, the more they lose control, and that's what we want." But what I didn't expect was an email from my old school. The former principal invited me to speak at a Women in Tech conference titled Women Who Build Their Own World. I sat in silence for a few minutes, not out of emotion, but because, for the first time in months, someone saw me as a whole human being, not a piece of someone's family, not Isaac's sister, not Jackson and Delilah's daughter, but Camilla, someone who had carved her own path. I agreed to speak. But first, I had to clean up a warped piece of my past at the upcoming trial, and I knew, whatever the outcome, I would never return to that old position, where I had to sacrifice my silence to preserve so-called harmony. Because now, I had chosen the truth, and truth never needs to apologize. Act 2.8. The hearing took place on a Monday morning at Suffolk County Court. I wore a charcoal blazer, my hair neatly tied back, and walked in with Natalie, who moved as if the courtroom tiles had been familiar to her in a previous life. Across the room, my father sat between my mother and Isaac. They avoided my eyes. Isaac wore a white shirt, his hair carefully styled, but I could clearly see his hand trembling beneath the documents. For a moment I realized they had never expected to end up in court. They thought I would let it go again, like I always had. But this time, I sat in the plaintiff's chair, head held high, calm, and steady. The prosecutor laid out each piece of evidence: the forged contract with a signature structurally inconsistent, the email sent from my mother's IP address, the audio recording of my father saying, "She won't notice if we do it quickly," and the part where Isaac loudly confirmed he needed the money to start his business and couldn't stop our parents. The judge, a woman around 60 with short silver hair and a deep voice, placed her hand on her chin after reviewing the documents. She asked, "Do the defendants have any justification for forging real estate documents belonging to a legal trust?" My mother spoke up, voice small. "We just thought she would understand. She doesn't go there often." My father cut in. "I didn't think this would be considered criminal. We're family, after all." The judge nodded, face unchanged. "Exactly because you're family, the fraud becomes all the more serious." Isaac lowered his head, silent. For the first time, I saw him stop resisting. No more excuses, only silent collapse. After an hour, the judge declared the temporary injunction to remain in place, the house sale voided, and the case forwarded to the district attorney for criminal investigation. My family was ordered to reimburse all my legal expenses and now faced charges of document forgery, property fraud, and breach of legal trust agreements. As I stood to leave the courtroom, my mother grabbed my hand. for the first time since it all began. She asked, through tears, "Are you really going to let your parents go to jail?" I looked at her, no longer angry, just empty. Number. The law will do that. I just chose to stand on the side of the truth. And I walked out of the courtroom without looking back. Outside, the sun was soft, and the wind brushed through my hair like an invisible hand undoing the old chains. I knew there would still be struggles ahead. But I also knew I had just reclaimed a part of myself they'd held for too long, the right to protect myself. In the days following the hearing, my family fell into complete silence. No calls, no messages. But silence didn't mean it was over. I knew they were trying to control the damage, and as expected, Isaac was the first to speak up. A long post appeared on his profile. "I've lost everything. My career, my reputation, my chance. All because someone in my family didn't know how to forgive. My sister, a successful programmer but so cold she sued her own parents and brother." The post was shared hundreds of times, with comments divided into two camps. Some called me a blood traitor, others asked, "Then who forged the documents? Who gambled the money away?" But most leaned toward pity, because Isaac claimed he had lost all funding, and his partners backed out after the media fallout. I didn't respond. Natalie advised silence, and I agreed. I'd been hurt enough to understand that some words exist only to provoke. Instead of retaliating, I focused my energy on preparing the next file, a petition to have Isaac removed from all benefits related to the trust. I no longer saw him as a naive victim in this play. Isaac had willingly aligned himself with our parents, taken the benefits, and participated in the manipulation. I also received an email from Carla Simmons, the woman who had been receiving support money from my father. The first line made me stop breathing for a few seconds. "I'm sorry. I didn't know all that money came from his daughter." She wrote that she had broken up with my father after learning he was facing lawsuits for property fraud. "I have a child, and I don't want him growing up with that kind of role model." Carla attached proof of the transfers, matching the data Michael had uncovered. The money I had sent under the pretense of helping an injured colleague of my father was really to help him maintain the image of a good man in front of his mistress. I printed the email and added it to the official record. Each puzzle piece was falling into place, not for revenge, but to build a clear picture of who did what and why I chose not to forgive. That night, I sat alone on my apartment balcony, looking out over Boston's slowly glowing streets. My phone lit up with a new notification. My mother's bank account had just been frozen under the ongoing investigation. I didn't smile. I simply tightened my grip on the warm cup of tea in my hands. I had never wished for them to lose everything. But I was no longer willing to sacrifice myself just to keep them standing tall. The truth was spreading, layer by layer. And I no longer felt like I was alone in the dark. I was walking through it, step by step, without looking back. One early autumn evening, while I was finishing a project report for a client in Berlin, my phone screen lit up. A message from my mother, short and simple. "I would love to have dinner with you. Can you come to my apartment tonight?" I read it several times. No apology, no acknowledgement, just an invitation, as if there'd never been a trial, never a forged contract, never a devastating betrayal. I didn't reply right away. I opened the window, letting the chilly breeze in, and thought about the last time my mother cooked for me, probably when I was 19, just before I left for college. Every time I came home after that, I was the one cooking. But that night, I still went. Partly out of curiosity, partly because I wanted to look her in the eye and see what she thought after everything. Her new apartment was in a luxury complex in Cambridge, clearly not something a liquor saleswoman could afford without financial help from someone. When I arrived, she was setting food on the table. Creamy mushroom soup I used to love, arugula salad, and garlic butter toast. She smiled. "I've missed you." I replied flatly, "I was never gone." Dinner passed in silence. My mother didn't mention the lawsuit, or Isaac, or my father. She only talked about how she was starting to change, going to therapy, joining a gambling addiction support group, reading books about generational trauma. I listened, didn't interrupt. After we finished eating, she handed me an envelope. I didn't open it right away. She said, "Just some thoughts, not excuses." I nodded, didn't promise anything, then got up to leave. On my way home, I stopped at a small cafe near Harvard Square, where I had spent countless nights during college coding until morning. I opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter, my mother's script still sharp and slightly tilted to the left. She wrote that when she was young, she had dreamed of becoming an architect, but was pushed to marry my father for stability. She said she saw herself in me, stubborn, independent, but she was afraid. Afraid her daughter would succeed more than she did, live freer than she did. I turned that fear into control. And then I lost you. I folded the letter and put it in my bag. I didn't cry. I didn't feel new pain, just lightness. A lightness because finally I received something I had longed for over 30 years, acknowledgement. That night, I didn't go home right away. I walked across the Longfellow Bridge, the cold wind brushing my cheeks, the Charles River shimmering with city lights. I opened my phone and sent Natalie a message. "We're continuing all legal procedures as planned, but thank you for helping me see the difference between justice and forgiveness with limits. No one can erase the past, but I can redraw the borders of my future." 2 weeks after meeting my mother, I returned to the lake house. For the first time in nearly 8 months, the rental car pulled up in front of the small stone path leading to the porch, where wild lavender had grown over the steps. The house stood still, silent and intact, as if no storm had ever touched it. I opened the door. Dust danced in the sunlight, and the scent of old wood and older books greeted me like an old friend still waiting. On the desk sat the coffee mug I had left unfinished on my last visit. I sat in the leather chair, placed my laptop on the desk, and opened the first draft for a platform I had long imagined, one designed to help young people escape toxic home environments. An idea that had flickered for years, but never had a chance to breathe. This time, it was different. I opened a new folder and named it Shelter. Not a place to hide, but a new path. I wanted to create a safe space for people like me, those who had been hurt in the very place meant to protect them. Not with moral lectures, but with practical tools, legal guides, therapist connections, survivor role models, and most importantly, a community, where no one is told, it's just a family matter. I looked out the window at the still lake. My reflection no longer showed the girl trying to please everyone, but a woman redefining herself. I used to think peace meant avoiding confrontation, but now I know. Peace comes only after facing what must be faced. I opened the balcony door. The breeze carried the scent of wet grass and wild ducks calling. I texted Natalie, "I'm donating this house. Let's begin the process of transferring it to the youth support nonprofit. It's done its job for me." I didn't do it to erase the past. I did it to turn pain into action. Every brick of this house was built with my silence, and now I want to give it away. So, someone else can begin, with less hurt. And as I closed the door, I knew. I wasn't leaving empty-handed. I was leaving with a voice no one could take from me anymore. That voice is mine. Life after the trial wasn't loud or dramatic as I once imagined. No one came to apologize. There were no tearful reconciliations, just a quiet emptiness at first, and slowly, healing. I continued my freelance programming, but now I worked from places of my own choosing. A small Brooklyn apartment in Autumn, a sunny Airbnb loft in San Francisco, a riverside cafe in Austin. I no longer tried to build a permanent base. My freedom lay in movement, in knowing I could exist without anyone clinging to me. I reconnected with Michael, the investigator who helped me open the door to truth. He once had a sister like me, someone who was used and left behind by her own family, and no one stood with her. I couldn't save her, so helping you saved a part of me, he told me one day over coffee. I was silent for a long time after that. Natalie, the lawyer, stern but principled, became a friend I could text at 2 a.m. about legal clauses, or simply send a photo of a burned cake. And Aunt Vivian, once dismissed by the family for never settling down, became the most solid foundation in my new life. On Sundays, we brewed ginger tea and wrote down the things we were once taught never to say. From them, I learned what chosen family meant. No shared blood, no titles, just people who make you feel worthy, without demanding silence in return. I used to believe I'd always be the outsider. The helper, the sponsor, the one never invited to the real table. But now, I don't need that table. I've built my own space, from what I lost, and more importantly, what I chose to keep. Dignity, voice, and kindness untouched by blood-bound guilt. And if one day someone asks me, Camilla, do you still believe in family? I'll smile and say, yes. But not the one I was born into. The one I chose. One October afternoon, I received an unmarked envelope. No return address, no law office logo. Just my name handwritten in neat, slanted script that felt disturbingly familiar. Camilla. I stood on the porch of my rental in Seattle, holding it for nearly 10 minutes before opening. Something in me, half forgiveness, half learning not to hate, began to tighten. I brewed ginger tea, sat by the window, and opened it with a swift cut. Inside was a 3-page letter from Isaac, not a text, not a blame-filled post, but a voice full of hesitation and truth. You might not believe it, but after the trial, I really hit bottom. I lost contracts, friends turned their backs, and, worst, I couldn't even recognize myself anymore. I'd lived too long in mom and dad's gaze. I thought success earned love. I thought taking from you to fund my dream was justified. But in the end, I was just afraid to start from zero. Isaac wrote that after his suppliers dropped out, he took a part-time job at a small cafe in Somerville, washing cups, wiping tables, learning coffee from scratch. And during slow shifts, he read my writing, my conference talk, my old Medium post, Why We Don't Owe Silence Just Because They're Family. You don't have to forgive me yet. I just want you to know. I finally see what I couldn't before. You're not selfish. You're brave. At the end, he left a new phone number. No request to meet, no plea. Just, if one day you feel ready to hear my voice again. I folded the letter and placed it next to the cooling tea. No tears. No anger. I realized the most important thing I reclaimed wasn't the house or legal justice, but the right to control my own heartbeat in front of those who once hurt me. I haven't called him, but I saved the number. A quiet promise that healing doesn't always end with a hug. Sometimes it begins with distance, safe enough not to be hurt again. And if one day I truly feel ready, the phone will ring. But this time, it'll be me who dials. A month after Isaac's letter, I learned my parents had started family therapy. Natalie told me, not them. It was court-mandated, part of their deal to avoid prosecution. At first, I thought it was a way to dodge responsibility. But then, one afternoon, I got an email from the Cambridge therapy office, where they were attending weekly sessions. Attached was a voice recording, requested by my mother. I hesitated a long time before pressing play. Her voice came through, not angry, not defensive like in past arguments. She spoke slowly, as if weighing each word. I raised my daughter with fear. Fear that she'd be different, that she'd grow beyond me. Succeed where I failed. I didn't see Camilla as someone with her own right to exist, just an extension of me. And I hurt her, again and again. Then came my father's voice. He was never good at apologizing. But this time, he said, I didn't think I was wrong, until I saw her face in court. She looked at me like I wasn't her father anymore. And I was truly afraid, not of the law, but because I knew I had lost her. I turned off the recording. My heart didn't clench. It quieted. Not because I forgave, but because I knew some words, even late, can end a cycle of harm. I didn't reply. I didn't call. But for the first time in years, I no longer locked my heart when someone said, family. That night, I wrote one sentence in my journal. I don't need their approval anymore. But I did deserve acknowledgement. And I got it. Not to reconnect. To close. And as I turned off the light, shut the laptop, and laid my head on the pillow, I knew. I had arrived in a place I once thought unreachable, where pain no longer dictated every choice. It had become a marker, not to go back. Peace isn't forgetting. It's remembering without fear. 6 months after the trial, I stood on stage at the annual tech conference in Seattle, facing hundreds of developers, founders, and tech students from across the US. My talk had no charts, no fundraising tips, just a story. The story of a daughter whose family forged her signature, stole her only home, and how she reclaimed not just her property, but her voice and her worth. I shared every step, from my mother's email asking, "Can you help Isaac?" to my father's fake for the family call, to the trembling moment I signed the lawsuit against the people who raised me. And I said, we don't owe anyone our silence, not even if they're family. We owe ourselves the truth. When I stepped off stage, people waited, some with tears, some just whispering, "Thank you for saying what I couldn't." That night, I returned to my Seattle apartment, laptop on my lap. On screen was Shelter, now with over 10,000 users, hundreds of shared stories, and a growing network of therapists, lawyers, and advisors all working to help those harmed by family feel less alone. I looked up at the city-lit sky. I didn't have a movie ending, no tearful reunion, no magical fix, but I had a new life, built from courage, resolve, and letting go at the right time. And that was enough. If you've ever felt crushed by the people meant to love you, ever been told to sacrifice for blood, ever been manipulated by sweet words wrapped in control, then this story is for you. You're not weak for hurting. You're not selfish for saying no. And you have every right to choose, not your parents, not your brother, but your own life. If you believe stories like Camilla's deserve to be told, to light the way for someone still stuck, like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend, a loved one, or the version of yourself from yesterday. Because sometimes what saves someone isn't a solution. It's a story, told at the right time. Thank you for listening.